Hello, and welcome to the Rabblecast. My name is Eric Hernandez, and it's just me. Just got done recording with Doug. Don't worry, he's on the episode itself, so you're just a few minutes away from him. We continue our 31 nights of movies, or 31 days. He mentions it again. I always get it wrong. I'm sorry. That's the way it showed up on the hashtag. 31 movies in 31 days, I believe it is. Horror movies, scary movies, whatever the case is. We run down his list so far that he's watched, and he's given us the most recent movies that he watched. I think he's up to number 20 so far. I might be wrong on that too. Listen to the episode and find out, and you can tell me afterwards. But it's fun to see Doug enjoying all the different films. He's watching them either by himself or with some friends. He's given me some recommendations. He's reminded me about different movies that I want to try out and check out from last episode. He had mentioned Crimson Peak, The Dead Don't Die, Renfield. Renfield is a more recent movie, so I might be able to catch that one a little simpler, a little quicker, because it's available on streaming. So we'll see what happens. And again, if anybody has some films, let us know what you're watching. We'll see what happens. We also get into other films and other projects that we have enjoyed, or recommendations, different things here and there. So we'll see how that all turns out. Well, you'll see. Listen in. Have fun. We are brought to you by InsidePulse.com. You can find us under the podcast section. You can also find us over at Rabblecast.libsyn.com, where the show is uploaded on a regular basis. Trust me, it is. I just have to work on it. More on that at the beginning of the show. You can also check us out on YouTube, youtube.com/Rabblecast. Check out the Facebook fan page. Send us a tweet at Rabblecast, because until somebody comes up with a better thing than send me an X, I'm going to keep saying tweet. And email us, rabblecast@gmail.com. And again, I thank you for the emails. I mentioned it at the beginning of the show, so I'm not going to harp on it too much. I appreciate that people are asking questions. I appreciate that people are wondering what happened with the show a couple weeks there. Just ran into a few things. Trust me, we're getting back on track. We'll see what happens. If you have a horror movie list or a Halloween movie list that you want to share, or if you just want to give us some of your top picks that you watch this time around the year, give us a heads up. I might even post something on Facebook and on Twitter saying, just, volunteer some information. I would love to hear what you guys are watching. I would love to hear any recommendations. There are a bunch of movies that I've seen, or I should say, there are a bunch of movies that Doug brings up that I have not seen, but a bunch of them ones that I've always been meant to sit down and watch. So I would love to hear some of your recommendations and see what comes of it, and then we'll go from there. Good? Great? Awesome. All right, I don't want to take too much more time. Have fun. Enjoy the show.
The Rabblecast.
We are. That's how we usually end. But
beginning is the end, my friend.
Beginning is the end, and the end is the beginning, right? Something along those lines. Wasn't that the Smashing Pumpkins song?
Which one? There's two versions of it.
Exactly. See.
Yeah.
That's where it comes from. No, it's. I'm not going to go into the full details here, but it's been a rough week and a half, I'll say. Between work and home and a bunch of other stuff, things have just been kind of a little wonky, to say the least. I will mention that I had a trip to the ER. So if anybody who's badgering me for the show, where is it? First off, the show's free. Settle down. I'm going to get to it, I swear. In fact, before we signed on to do this episode, earlier today, for anybody who's keeping count at home, episode number 626 is currently up and available. So if you're missing out on the show, go, download it, listen to it, click on the link wherever you go to, at the Libsyn site, YouTube, Inside Pulse, or if you download it on Apple Podcasts, it's all there. It's all set. Go for it. Have fun. 627, quite literally, as I speak into this apparatus, behind me is my laptop. And open on my laptop is 627, which is currently in the midst of being edited. That'll hopefully be done soon. I don't want to tell you tonight or tomorrow, because otherwise you never know what's going to happen. But this is all to say that I don't like having the show be late. Sometimes things just happen and things get in the way. I know last episode I did a little housekeeping, so consider this the continued housekeeping just to let everybody know what's going on, because everybody's saying, oh my god, they're taking off again, they're not going to come back. We're here. All right, I'm not going anywhere. I don't know if Doug has any plans of leaving anytime soon. He'll let me know, I'm sure, if something comes up.
I'm just hanging loose. Yeah, I'm here to record and shit. I got the easy job on this show. I just talk in my phone for an hour 15 to an hour and a half.
Same.
You're the one doing the heavy lifting there, fella.
So for all those emails, thank you for the emails, first off. Settle down on the other end, because it'll come. Trust me. The show's coming out. Thank you for being loyal listeners. Thank you for understanding. Sometimes things just happen. And unless I can find somebody who's willing to edit the show for free, which I really doubt, it is what it is right now. So trying to get things going, keep it moving, having fun. That's about it. Good? All right. With that said, sir, do you want to continue your 31 nights of horror or 31 nights of movies? I don't know what it's called anymore. 31 movies for 31 nights? Something like that?
31 horror movies in 31 days of October.
Thank you. I keep getting it wrong. I think I even updated it incorrectly last time, but the hashtag came up 31.
It's all good, man. It's all good.
I'm trying my best here. I'm holding it together, guys.
Okay. Ready?
Yeah, let's go down the list again. This is fun. I like this.
Okay, are we starting from the beginning, or am I picking off where I was? I can't remember.
Just do the run through of the ones that you've watched already. Only, again, if anybody just happened to miss the other episodes, we'll approach it as if this is their first episode ever, and the list will start fresh. And then we can delve into the ones you watched most recently.
All right, sounds good to me. Okay, so number 1, Night of the Demons, the original from '87. Number 2, Messiah of Evil. Number 3, Hell House LLC Part 3, Lake of Fire. Number 4, Hell House LLC Part 2, The Abaddon Hotel. Number 5, Psycho Gorman. Number 6, Crimson Peak. Number 7, Hell House LLC. Number 8, The Dead Don't Die. Number 9, Redfield. 10, Lords of Salem. 11, Terrifier. 12, Brotherhood of the Wolf. And 13, Funhouse Massacre, which takes us up to where we are now, I believe.
What number was that last one?
The last one, Funhouse Massacre, that's number 13.
Okay.
All right, so number 14, we have All Hallows Eve. This was an anthology film from, I think, 2013, 2014. It was the movie that introduced the character of Art the Clown, who's like the main antagonist of the Terrifier series. This was his debut in an interesting, actually a pretty good anthology series. I'm a sucker for a good anthology. Give me some nice, fun short stories. I'm all into them.
Here's a quick question for you. So, for anthologies,
what's up?
Would you prefer for an anthology to have just like short stories, or would you prefer to have the short stories but having like an interconnecting plot thread?
I am totally down for them being standalone stories with like some type of like an interstitial between them that kind of like ties everything together. Like a good one I always think of is in Tales of Halloween, which packs it in. That's like a shit ton of. There's like 8 or 9 of them in that one. I think it's a crazy amount of shorts. In that one, everything's tied together by this DJ on air who's kind of narrating over the events of Halloween, who's played by Adrienne Barbeau.
Oh, okay.
Yep. But yeah, I do kind of like it when there's like something that ties everything together, especially if it's one of those deals where you have a bunch of different stories, and then kind of in between each, starting off the movie, and then in between each story, there's like, you get a little piece of something that ties everything together. And then that one all kind of gets tied up in the final story of the movie before it ends.
Okay. I like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good fun. It's a good example of that, I think, would be Trick or Treat from 2007, which is, if you're not familiar with that movie, you've definitely seen the main character of Sam. It's like a little kid wearing like a Halloween costume. That's like a bag on his head.
Yeah, very familiar with that one. Again, my son likes to check out all the different videos. So for a while, he was very into Sam and Trick or Treat. So,
oh, right on. Okay, at number 15 we have Dead and Buried. This is came out back in 1981, I believe. It's the story of a small town in Maine called Potter's Bluff, where people mysteriously die, but then they seem to show up in the town the next day, just as if they'd been there forever and ever. And it's up to the sheriff, played by James Ferrantino, to get to the bottom of things. And it's an interesting take on the zombie genre.
Hmm.
I probably just gave away a good chunk of the ending, but it's 42 years old. You know, what are you waiting for?
First off, it hurts when you put it that way. Secondly, this is one of the movies that I recall seeing the movie cover for in the horror section back in the old video store days.
Okay. It's it's got that cool cover where it's like the face of somebody kind of like up through the earth, and the earth is like kind of cracked, and there's like the moon in the background.
Yep.
Yeah. Good stuff. Coming in at number 16, Friday the 13th, the original from 1980, with Adrienne King and Betsy Palmer and all those wonderful people. I watched that one last Friday on Friday the 13th because you kind of have to.
Fair enough.
All right, number 17, The Wicker Man, the original from the early 70s with Christopher Lee, which is funny because a couple of years ago on doing this Halloween thing, I watched the Wicker Man remake with Nick Cage. So I did that like years before I did the original.
And how did that turn out for you?
This movie? Oh, well, no, I love the original. It's a fantastic film.
Well, I should say, like, if you had like a go-to, like you're on a deserted island and you can only watch one version of The Wicker Man, which one would you pick?
Don't make me choose. Because one of them is this wonderful piece of folk horror from the 70s, and Christopher Lee from all the Hammer horror films, he does a fantastic job. And and actually it's one of the few movies with like lots of singing in it that doesn't irritate the hell out of me. There's a lot of nudity. That's always a good time. So that's a tough one. And the other one's got Nick fucking Cage. So I don't know. That's like a dead heat right there, buddy.
I love how you gave all these other examples for the Christopher Lee version, and then you're like, and the other one's got Nick fucking Cage. And that alone qualifies
like
it.
He just loses. It's Nick Cage. For half the movie, he's just kind of hanging loose, and then it starts to ramp up, and then by the third act, he's just losing his mind. He's just running around like punching women in the face and like pulling guns on people and stealing bicycles, and it's just ridiculous from there. It's a party.
Okay.
Coming in next at number 18, The Conjuring, the original one from, good God, I can't believe this movie's 10 years old already. This is the movie that kicked off the Conjuring universe, which feels weird to say, but they've already got like 2 different spin-offs of the show. This one you've got The Conjuring, then they had like Conjuring 2, then they had The Nun, then they had Annabelle, and I think all of those had sequels. I think they're up to like 6 or 7 of these movies within that universe.
Now, the first Conjuring movie, was that with Kevin Bacon? Or am I thinking of a different one?
I think you're thinking of Stir of Echoes.
Yes, I am. Thank you.
No problem. No, this is the one with, do you remember the dude who played
Night Owl in the Watchmen?
Movie?
Yes.
Yes. I can't remember the dude's name. Patrick Wilson, maybe?
I want to say yes.
I can picture the dude's face. Go ahead.
You keep going. I'll look him up real fast.
Okay. This is a really good movie. It's an interesting play on the exploits of Ed and what the hell's her name? The Warrens. Ed Warren, I think it's Leslie Warren. It was a couple who claimed to be paranormal investigators back in the 70s and 80s.
I have here
they were famous.
Patrick Wilson playing Ed Warren and Vera Farmiga, I can't remember how to pronounce her name, playing Lorraine Warren.
There we go, Lorraine, not Leslie. Yeah, the famous Warren couple who claimed to be paranormal investigators and psychic to varying degrees, and also claimed that they were trained in doing exorcisms. They did a lot of embellishments so they could sell books and get speaking tours, but they do make for good subject matter for movies. And this was an excellent movie about demonic possession within a house after a family moves into it. Very good. I don't know how the hell I waited 10 years to watch this.
Okay.
But
Definitely one of the ones that it's been on my list for quite some time, and probably because of Patrick Wilson too. Let's face it, like it's a familiar face. So
Yeah, good stuff. And then after that, number 19, the original Halloween from 1978, classic as always. Um, Number 20, another anthology film I found on Shudder called Holidays, which was something I kind of was like poking around. I was like, oh, let me check this out. I've been meaning to watch this. It was fucking awesome. Including but not limited to the theme of the movie was it's got anthologies, and each horror story is based off of a different holiday. So there's an Easter one, there's a thing, or there's a Valentine's Day one, an Easter one, a Mother's Day one, a Halloween one, a Christmas one, and a New Year's one. And I've got to say, the Easter one is so fucking creepy. It's wild how creepy it is.
do they attempt to explain the correlation between Easter eggs and chocolate bunnies and Jesus Christ?
Actually, yes, they do.
I'm in.
At one point, I looked at the one creature and I realized it's like, oh my god, that's an amalgamation of a bunny and Jesus. And I was super creeped out.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it is wildly like basically they took like a lot of the stuff that has to do with like a lot of the rebirth of Jesus stuff mixed in with some of the pagan stuff they borrowed liberally from in the Bible and the church, and they just kind of started slapping stuff together, and I was just like, wah. So it is wild how creepy it is. Also, fun fact: one of the shorts was directed by Kevin Smith.
Oh gosh, what was that one? I think I heard about this. I can't remember the name of it now. Damn it. He's been doing
Go ahead.
He's been doing a lot of fun projects with film students, and one of them was where he was filming. He filmed Kilroy, which was a horror movie, and then he was talking about some other movie project that he was doing like for an anthology set. I can't remember what it was off the top of my head, but that's cool. I like to hear that it's getting some notoriety, and that you're also talking about it here. So
yeah, it was pretty good. He did one for Halloween, and the star of it was. Do you remember Harley Morenstein, Sauce Boss from Epic Mealtime?
Yes.
Yeah, he was the star of it. It was weird.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
he is not a good-looking man without a shirt on.
How judgmental of you, sir.
I'm going to be judgmental on that one, but I was just like, oh, dude, you look rough.
But not somebody I would have pegged for a Halloween movie, but at the same time, like we were talking about last time, horror movies sometimes are open ground for just about anybody to get in and enjoy the fun. So the fact that he's involved, that's surprising, but also kind of cool.
Yeah, well, hold on. Go for it. All right. After that is Raven's Hollow. That was a direct-to-streaming short. I don't know how realistic it was. It's based on when Edgar Allan Poe was at the U.S. Military Academy. I think it was supposed to be West Point, and how he was out on maneuvers with other cadets somewhere in upstate New York, and they come across a guy who had been gutted, and he was left basically hanging as a scarecrow. So they take the body of the guy who's like on the edge of death, and go to the nearest town, which is called Raven's Hollow, and all of a sudden the mystery is afoot, and it turns into a fun little story dealing with demons and some other weird shit. Not bad. It's got great atmosphere, but it was slow.
Interesting. Okay.
And that takes us up to number 22, Popcorn.
I vaguely remember seeing like posters for this one.
It's the poster. It's like a woman's face, and it's like on a stick, and it's being taken away, and behind it is a skeleton's face.
Yes.
Yes, came out back in like the late 80s. The tagline was "Buy a bag, popcorn. Buy a bag, go home in a box."
That's a pretty good tagline. Okay.
Yeah, it's a pretty good tale. It's about a bunch of film students who try to run a all-night film festival at a movie theater that's going to be torn down. But they try to do it in the spirit of the old movie houses of the 50s. So they've got like super schlocky movies. They've got props all over the place. Everybody's in costume. They've got like stuff rigged up like so people get like shocked when they're in the seats and all kinds of weird stuff like that. And it turns out to be a murder mystery surrounding like a cult of like weirdos who tried to make an experimental film, but then the leader of the cult like ended up like setting the theater on fire, and a bunch of people escaped, and everything went sideways from there, and everybody died in it. And apparently he's back from the dead, but it just gets kind of weird from there. It turns into a fun whodunit slasher film.
Okay.
Yeah, fun stuff. Yeah, that takes us up to bat on where I'm at now. So it is October 19th today.
Yes,
yeah,
sir.
The 19th.
Yep.
Yeah, so I'm up to 22. So I'm a couple ahead for the month. So yeah, we'll see where we go from here. I got a couple other ones. There's some classics I'm going to revisit. There's a couple of new ones I still want to watch. I just have to go. I just have to pay money for them, and yeah, get into it.
What a genius, like, little marketing tool this could be for a bunch of different places for streaming. Like, create this challenge of sorts to get people to watch 31 movies. And a lot of them will be available. Let's face it, YouTube, there's a lot of unofficial copies of movies. At the same time, you can buy a subscription for YouTube, or like you're doing through Shudder or through other streaming services, being able to either get a subscription for a month or two, whatever it takes, and then also renting movies. So like what? Rentals narrowed to like $2, $3, depending on the movie. If it's been out for a while, maybe a little higher for newer films. So I wonder how much money is generated from these little like clubs or these little challenges that do this on a regular basis to try to like just keep the community going and, you know, keep the genre pumping, because this is kind of cool that a lot of these movies are being talked about. There's other friends, especially from the wrestling locker room, the old days, where they'll also be posting up their lists, and it's fun to see like the variety of different movies that are coming back and forth. One movie in particular that I have not seen on anybody's list, nor yours. I mean, granted, we're still, what, 9 days away from you finishing the full list, or at least 9 films.
Yeah.
Any, let's see, any plans on watching The Frighteners? I know that's one that we've talked about at length sometimes.
I just watched The Frighteners about a month or so ago.
Oh,
so
okay.
I don't know if I'm going to be watching it again that soon. I was talking about it with my girlfriend like back in sometime in September, and I mentioned, because she's a very big Lord of the Rings fan, and I mentioned, I was like, oh, hey, did you ever see this movie? It was the last one Peter Jackson did before he landed Lord of the Rings and started working on those. And she's like, I've never even heard of this movie. So I was like, oh, we need to watch this. I think you will like this, because that is a great lost gem of a film.
It's weird to think of it like that, because I never considered it like, I mean, granted, now it's like, what, 96 it came out?
Summer 96.
So, yes, it's an older film at this point. But I remember like the hype for it. I remember everybody talking about it, Michael J. Fox being in it. It had some comedic elements to it, and it also had some horror elements, obviously. But yeah, it's weird to think like that's a lost gem for Peter Jackson before he found the dump truck full of money in his backyard. Because after that, he was off to Tolkien, land or country, and from there, all the different movies, Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, and everything else. Even, what was it? He did his version of King Kong at one point, and everything was just like rolling big for him, and he was just like, you could almost never miss unless you watch King Kong. That one didn't turn out so well, but it's interesting to see where he went from the early movies that he would do and then where he ended up now. But Frighteners has always been one of those things, and maybe it's because it's Michael J. Fox, and maybe it's has a cast of characters that are in there that you don't get to see that often anymore, especially in that setting. But for anybody who hasn't watched The Frighteners, I mean, I know my list does not exist for this month. Let's be clear with that. Anybody who's been listening to the past couple episodes, Doug is the one who's taken on the challenge because he's enjoying it. He's having fun. I don't have the time to invest into it as much, so I watch a couple movies here and there. I still have to finish, I think last time I mentioned It Chapter 2. I have to finish that one still. But I've been trying to sneak in a few things here and there. I still have to watch. You recommended Renfield from last week, and
Yes.
I believe it was The Dead Don't Die.
Yes.
So I have to try to find the time to watch those a little bit. There's just been a lot of stuff going on, so I'm anticipating your list because some of the ones that you're giving me so far, like Dead and Buried, that's one that I've always seen in the video store, like I said, but I never actually sat down to watch it. One, because I was too much of a wuss when I was younger, and two, now that I'm older, those movies aren't readily available. Whether it's Netflix or other streaming services, in most cases, did you have to buy that one, or did you have a copy of that one?
Oh, I've got a copy of that one.
Oh, okay. So there you go. You had it ready at your disposal. I can't speak tonight. So that's cool. I mean, you have a horror collection, so that makes sense. But there's a bunch of them, like Renfield and Dead Don't Die. I'll probably be able to find them a little bit easier. They're newer, but some of those old classic movies, Dead and Buried, Nightbreed, a lot of those. Like I know I mentioned the Ghoulies, even though the Ghoulies really isn't that kind of stuff. Or what was the one? There was over the week. I thought about these two movies and I wanted to ask you, and I forgot to text you.
Okay.
There was one. The one actor just passed away. Warlock.
Oh, with Julian Sands. Yes.
Thank you. Yes, that was one of the ones where I caught. I think my brother had a tape, and after one movie finished on the tape, it had recorded over part of Warlock, so I only saw like the last 2/3 of it. Like the first beginning of it was, I guess, recorded over, or was just a bad recording. So I saw part of Warlock growing up, and I always thought that was kind of weird. And that led me to another one. Was it The Seventh Gate?
The Ninth Gate.
Ninth Gate, was it?
No, Ninth Gate. That's what do you remember about the movie?
Not much, unfortunately. I remembered Gate in the title, obviously, and there was a number to it. But these are from the late nights. I'm not supposed to be watching this. What the hell am I watching? I should go to bed now. So,
Because there was a book and movie called The Ninth Gate, but that came out in like 1999 with Johnny Depp.
No, I want to say there was an earlier version because I don't remember Johnny Depp being part of it.
Okay, could it possibly have been The Seventh Seal?
That seems more likely.
Yeah, there was a Demi Moore was in it.
Is this the one where she has the weird dream where there's something like she's giving birth to?
Yeah, and it's supposed to be like this whole like apocalyptic tale and and all kinds of wacky stuff like that, and they're trying to figure out and yeah, Michael Baine's there too, and yeah, there's all kinds of stuff going on.
Yeah, that sounds more like it. Was it? Wow, was it? Demi Moore was that?
Say again?
Was it Demi Moore?
Yeah, Seventh Sign is a 1988 American apocalyptic drama horror film. Blah blah blah. The title and plot reference the Seven Seals. Oh, Seventh Sign, not Seven Seals. The title and plot reference the Seven Seals described in the Book of Revelation, the final book of the New Testament of the Bible. Blah 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 blah. Yeah, it was Demi Moore. There's a bunch of all kinds of crazy stuff going on that's like supposed to be signs of the biblical apocalypse. And yeah, there's a bunch of investigations going on. Demi Moore is a pregnant woman who's, she gets pregnant. She starts having problems with her pregnancy. There's all kinds of crazy stuff going on like that. It gets like into some very heavy biblical stuff.
Okay. I remember the scene where she's giving birth to something, and then when she looks over and sees what it is, she just like freaks the hell out. It's a horrific scene. And I think that was one of those moments where I saw what was going on. I'm like, what the hell? I'm leaving. So, again, yes. Okay, so I said Ninth Gate originally. Yes, Seventh Sign sounds more like it. Wow, okay, I can't believe I completed the two. Never watched Ninth Gate either, with the one with Johnny Depp, so that's another one I'll probably have to cross off my list eventually. Again, these are like loose plot threads in my brain, because I'm always curious as to what happened or how the story plays out. But I never got around to them. So, what did we say before? All right, so we have Seventh Sign and shit, what was the other one I was just talking about? A Warlock. I have to actually watch that one and actually watch the full thing. Was there a sequel to Warlock or no?
There's a sequel, Warlock 2 Armageddon, I think, and there may have even been a third one, actually.
Ooh.
I'm trying to remember. I watched the first one years ago, and I don't think I ever caught any of the sequels. But I'm trying to think now. Oh, it was directed by Steve Miner, who worked on a bunch of the Friday the 13th movies.
Okay.
Yeah, let's see. Sequels. Two sequels followed, with Julian Sands reprising his role in the first sequel, Warlock the Armageddon. Although both sequels serve as standalone films with no connection to the original. Yes, and then they made another one in 1999 called Warlock 3 End of Innocence.
That doesn't seem to have Julian Sands at all.
The third one?
Yeah. Here it's showing.
No, he was in it. He was in all of them.
IMDb's lying to me. Hold on, give me 1 second.
I was gonna say I'm on Wikipedia right now, there, fella. That's what. Unless somebody's messing with me.
Okay, no. It just means he was not. So for 1 and 2, he was the star of it, and then for the third one, it says Bruce Payne, Ashley Lawrence, and Bodie Bliss.
Oh, you're right. He was not in the third one. I'm sorry.
Okay, I thought like, it might have been one of those things where like he was done with it, but they probably got him to come back for like a cameo or something like that. But there you go. Another movie franchise that started out decently, but then when they tried to push it forward, it's like what's the other one with Christopher Walken as the angel Gabriel?
Oh, The Prophecy.
Thank you. First one was great. Second one. And then from there, they kept pushing it, just like diminishing returns as you go along.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Oh, the first one. I think everything was overshadowed in the first one by Viggo Mortensen playing Lucifer.
Fair enough. I forgot about that. You're right.
Because that was the first time I ever saw Viggo Mortensen. I was like, this guy is legitimately terrifying. And I was like a teenager at that point when I saw it. So.
Well, slick his hair back, pale, little dark makeup here and there. No, he did a fantastic job. In fact, the fact that you just said it, like, shocked my memory back into it. And like, oh wow, that was him. Shit, I forgot about that completely. For me, in my brain, it was always Christopher Walken and the guy. I always forget his name, but I always remember him as the guy who played Casey Jones in the Ninja Turtles movie.
Oh, that's our old buddy Elias Koteas.
Thank you. There you go. I remember the Elias. I can never remember the last name. But yeah, I mean that movie in of itself, it was so odd when I first watched it as a kid. I really was like when I was a teen growing up. But at that point, I was starting to open up to some movies more and more, especially when that one scene where Walken goes into the morgue and he wakes up one of the bodies that's already been dead and just like makes it his lackey and forces it to come do his bidding. Otherwise, they're like pretty much in purgatory, which kind of sucks for them because they're still in pain.
Yeah, I remember it was kind of like a messed up thing where the person is just throughout the entire film like begging to be like just begging for death. Yeah.
Yeah, they just want to be released. They know they have to follow what he says, but like, come on. Those are always kind of cool. And he always, in the first and second movies, when he goes to seek out, these meat puppets, as he referred to them as, I thought that was kind of cool, where he'd just walk over to them and essentially just like either like touch their head or shush them, and then they suddenly wake up. And it's like, oh, this is kind of cool. Interesting little thing. And of course, Christopher Walken being Christopher Walken just adds another layer of creepiness and awesomeness to the whole role.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So, okay. Oh, look at that. As I'm going through, I was looking at the listing for the third Warlock movie. On the sidebar, I got a couple films that popped up. Let's see. Chopping Mall.
Mm-hmm.
Hellraiser.
Classic.
28 Days Later.
Not quite a classic. But
No, they're not all winners. Vampire in Brooklyn.
I've never seen that, actually.
That's a guilty pleasure.
Okay.
It's there's the one scene our friend Michael and I used to talk about this one all the time. We'd go back and forth on it, where Eddie Murphy as a vampire in Brooklyn, as it states, at one point he's being confronted by a bunch of hoodlums. Let's say it's been a while since I watched it, so I can't exactly recall the situation. But the line was, and it was from the trailer. He said, I've been hanged, I've been broken on the rack, but I've never been shot before. And he sticks his finger in the bullet hole, and he looks up at him and goes, kind of itches a little. I was like,
oh, that was in the trailer. Yeah.
yeah, oh yeah, it was a great scene. And they also did the same thing. We were talking about Renfield before. They do a thing very similar to that, where the guy who played from a different world, who was the main character, who was in love with Simone.
Oh, is that Kadeem Hardison?
I want to say that was Kadeem Hardison. Okay, I believe. Don't quote me on this, but I believe he was also in the movie, and he essentially ends up becoming the Renfield for Eddie Murphy's Dracula or vampire in that film.
Oh, okay.
So as the movie progresses, he starts to deteriorate. He starts to start eating bugs and everything else, and it becomes like a really weird reflection of that relationship. So it's like, okay, I can see what you're going for. You're trying to play on the different tropes. But that one's a guilty pleasure. It's a fun one. It's a weird one. You wouldn't think of Eddie Murphy doing any kind of like horror or scary kind of stuff. But again, actors are actors. They want to do different things. I mean, hell, Eddie Murphy released a music album. Don't go check it out. Trust me. But it's just another example of sometimes they get sick and tired of being typecast or pigeonholed in certain roles. Eddie Murphy being, the funny guy or, the action star, especially like Beverly Hills Cop. So he decided he wanted to branch out and try a bunch of different things before. I think this is like shortly before he decided, I'm going to give it up for a little while and walk away. And then when he does decide to come back, he's killing it once again. So good for him, but an odd one for sure on his list of different accomplishments in movies.
Yes. I don't get me wrong. I've always meant to watch it. I just never got around to it because I always heard it was actually it was like one of the movies. Like after that, like some of Eddie Murphy's stuff started to kind of slip in quality.
I can see that. Yeah. He was making different choices at that point.
Yeah. Like by the time we got to like Bowfinger in the late '90s, it's like, I don't know, man. I don't know.
See, I kind of like Bowfinger in a weird way, and I appreciate it after the fact. When I first watched it, I was not a fan. Like, what the hell is going on here? But when you watch it again, I don't know if you're going to, but for anybody listening, the fact that they're trying to make a movie within a movie, and there's two different Eddie Murphys. There's the cool movie star Eddie Murphy, who's playing himself, and then there's the weird, like, twin, or not even a twin, what is it? They find like a lookalike, essentially.
I think that was it. It's been a while since I even poked at that movie.
Yeah, then he looked like so much of a dead ringer for Eddie Murphy that they decided to use him for like the close-ups, and they do like wide shots with the actual Eddie Murphy, or vice versa, whatever the case is. So with that involved, then you've got Heather Graham, Steve Martin, and a bunch of other actors in there that just did their thing. And in retrospect, I think I appreciate that movie more than when it was. Not so much with Boomerang. that for me, that was an interesting one at the very least, but it was not. Again, I wasn't expecting that kind of Eddie Murphy. So it's just one of those things. But yeah, I agree with you that after a while, certain choices were being made. And just like, all right, maybe he just got sick and tired of doing the same thing over and over again, was trying to stretch his legs a little bit or spread his wings, whatever the case whatever analogy you want to use. And just after a while, he's like, you know what? I've had it. I've got money. I'm going away for a while. And then decides to come back whenever he's good and ready. Probably because his kids were asking him, hey, didn't you used to be that guy? Like, oh, yeah, I can do that again. Hold on. Hold my beer. Some of the other ones here that are popping up, again, these are things that I've seen here and there, whether it's, at the movie store or online, just pop up as far as references or just like, you might like this. Waxworks. Never watched that one.
Okay.
And 976 Evil.
Oh, I think it was about a demonic phone sex line.
Ooh, tell me more.
I never saw it one. I just remember that's one of those ones I remember reading about and saying, that sounds really fucked up and sleazy. I should watch that, but I just never seemed to get around to it. So yeah, that's definitely one I should go check out one of these days.
Ooh, okay. So just by looking at this real briefly, let me just read the summary here, then I'll tell you who directed it. People who
Okay.
dial 976 evil receive supernatural powers and turn into satanic killers. When Spike dialed 976 evil, he knew it was an expensive toll call, but he didn't know that he'd have to pay for it with his soul.
Oh,
Okay?
that's awesome. Yeah.
The director? Robert Englund.
Huh.
Wasn't ready for that one.
You know, here's the crazy thing about Robert Englund. He had quite the extensive. Obviously, we all know him as Freddy Krueger, but he had a remarkably extensive whatchamacallit, go around just in whatchamacallit, in a lot of different other movies too. Like he was in the aforementioned Dead and Buried. He was in that as a truck driver or a tow truck driver.
Really?
Uh, yeah, he was in that. I think it was the second movie directed by Tobe Hooper, the guy who gave us the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. His second movie was called Eaten Alive, and it's about this like guy who runs like a rundown, dilapidated hotel off on the bayou, and anybody who messes with him, he ends up killing with a scythe and feeding to a giant alligator. And Robert Englund plays a creepy pervert who wants to fuck women in the ass in it.
Okay.
Yeah, he's like super sleaze in that movie. And there was like a couple other things he's showing up in, of course. I mean, even last week, that piece of shit movie I was watching, the one with the clowns and the dumb stuff. I already forgot the name of.
Killer Clowns from Outer Space?
No, not that one. That's actually good.
Or Terrifier?
There was something else. It wasn't Terrifier. It was something else. It's not important. It was number 13 on my list. I just don't have my list in front of me right now.
Okay.
But yeah, he showed up in that for like 5 minutes as like the warden of a prison.
Interesting. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, look, if you have a genre that you can hit and work consistently, why not? You know, like I know sometimes we were just talking about with Eddie Murphy. Sometimes you have to get the same work over and over again. You have to be the funny guy. You have to have these funny situations. Blah blah blah. But if you find something that where people are going to constantly bring your name up along with it, whether it's horror, whether it's comedy, I mean, that just sounds like a fucking gift. So, and maybe it's like a gilded prison in a sense, because you're like locked into that genre. I think of Jim Carrey when I think about this, because for as funny as he is, he wanted to do more drama and be more of an actor rather than just a comedian. Because let's face it, the Ace Ventura movies, fantastic. What was it? The Number 23 was like this weird kind of like thriller mystery movie. It was not really horror. There were a few deaths in there here and there, but nothing gory. But it was more like a mystery to figure out what the correlation of the Number 23 was into his character and how it just seemed to pop up in different ways. And it was an interesting film, not the greatest by any stretch, but an interesting watch at the very least. My favorite movie of Jim Carrey is actually a movie called The Majestic. I don't know if you ever watched it.
I remember that. I haven't seen that in years.
Yeah, I caught it one night. It was like on Stars when we were subscribed to it when I was a kid. Watched it. I was expecting funny Jim Carrey. In fact, you do get funny Jim Carrey early on, but then as the movie progresses, you're like, oh wow, this is like not funny Jim Carrey anymore. We're actually getting a dramatic Jim Carrey, and I thought it was fantastic as I watched it. Not everybody loves it. When I bring it up every now and then in different circles, people are like, oh, that movie sucks. That's because you're expecting something different. And if you go back and watch it with a different lens, you might appreciate it more. So I appreciated the story itself. But yeah, if you can find it, like for Robert Englund, yeah, okay, you're Freddy. Congrats. That's your lot in life for a lot of people. But if you can continue working, directing, acting, I remember seeing Robert Englund pop up. I know we talked about Fort Fairlane last time, but also when he pops up in stories for like, I don't know if he was ever in any of the Hitchhiker episodes on HBO, but Tales from the Crypt, I think I remember seeing him pop up a couple times. And just like oddball roles here and there, just different films. But hey, again, you can find the work. More power to you.
Mm-hmm.
Two other films that pop up here, just to go through. So first off, before I get ahead of myself, apparently there was a 976 Evil Part 2.
Okay.
Dr. Giggles, another one that I've seen on the shelf, never actually got to watch it.
Oh, okay.
I don't remember the name of the actor again, so help me out here if you remember. He played Durant in Darkman, the bad guy.
That is Larry Drake.
There you go. He has a very, like, those eyes of his, in fact, they use it for the cover of the film. He has a very scary or intimidating demeanor. So, as Durant in Darkman, he did a fantastic job there. But just, I could imagine doing, like, being very creepy in a horror movie as well. And then the other one I did watch, it was a long time ago. I think I only watched it once with an ex-girlfriend back in the day. Brain Scan.
Oh, with a little bit of Edward Furlong in there, I believe.
Yeah. Playing a video game, and that the character that starts essentially like terrifying him. Let's see. Edward Furlong, Frank Langella, T. Ryder Smith, directed by John Flynn. When was this? 94.
That was like 90. No, I was about to say 93, 94-ish.
God. I feel old. Let's see. Teenager is part of an interactive video game where he kills innocent victims. Later, the murders become real. It's like a quasi VR kind of thing that was happening in the game.
Yeah, and I remember the antagonist for it had like this cool like kind of mohawk that I think was like purple and had like vaguely monstrous features.
Yeah, I'm trying to see who played him. I think they just refer to him as the Trickster. And he was played by T. Ryder Smith. Okay. I never really looked into this one.
I never saw that one. That was another one where I remember even like we're watching the TV spots for it. Just never got around to it in my travels.
Interesting. Okay, well, there you go. Thanks to IMDb for helping out with a bunch of different suggestions on the side there.
Mm-hmm. I will say this, going back to Larry Drake, star Dr. Giggles for a second, he was in another fantastic movie from the early 1980s. It was a made-for-TV movie. It came out in 1981. I want to say, I think it actually even aired on network TV on Halloween night of 81. It was called Dark Night of the Scarecrow. Basically, Larry Drake, he plays a mentally handicapped man who's friends with like a little girl because he's got the mentality of like a child. So he just kind of hangs out with her and just plays with her, and he's very innocent. And the local postman, he sees them together, and he's kind of like it's an interesting case of projection, because throughout the movie, he's constantly saying, he's like, I bet that guy's like molesting her or something like that. And it's kind of like intimated or intimated later on in the film that he's actually the one who's sexually attracted to the child. He's just a creepy mess of a human being. But yeah, basically, like, they go after the guy, they kill him, and then all of a sudden, accidents start happening to the four guys who were involved in the murder. So, yeah, the question is, like, are they just random accidents, or is there some type of supernatural force at work? And it's whatchamacallit? Yeah, it's a pretty good film. It was actually, like, for a TV movie, it's remarkably well made.
What was it called again?
Dark Night of the Scarecrow.
Interesting. I'm going to have to look that one up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very good.
Oh, here's one that popped up. And I was trying to stay away from the list, but I just caught it out of the corner of my eye. Silver Bullet.
Oh, yeah, the old werewolf movie.
Yeah. That was one. That was right along the lines when I remember watching this one. Because, again, my brothers were watching it on HBO, or whatever it was available on at the time. And Cujo was the other one. Because, again, going along the lines, I believe they're both Stephen King stories, right? So,
yes.
And I remember Cujo terrifying me just because seeing this giant dog with a blood-soaked maw. I was like, what the fuck are we watching here, guys? And again, for anybody who's listening in for the first time, for me, I was terrified as a child. Getting to appreciate these stories now and the storytellings. What did I listen to recently? The Shining, actually, yeah, or another Stephen King story, very famous story. I watched the Jack Nicholson version, Stanley Kubrick. I tried watching the made-for-TV Shining movie that was put out a while back. Funny enough, I think with the guy from Wings.
Yeah, it was the irresponsible brother Brian, who was he played the main role as the caretaker.
Yeah, was it Jack? Oh gosh, I just listened to the book like 2 months ago. You think I'd remember more about it, but suffice to say, listening to the audiobook for The Shining and hearing the detail and more of the backstory and everything else that was going on with the Overlook, I appreciate that a lot more, and I see where the differences were made as far as the movie. And again, trying to take things from the book don't necessarily translate to the big screen and vice versa, whatever the case is. But there have been so many different things that have been embellished for the story that you get to appreciate the story itself, the telling of it and how it's done. That now, especially, I'm getting more and more interested in looking up more older Stephen King stories. I know he's had like so many out there at this point, and if you want to read the stories themselves, or if you want to get the anthologies that he's done as well, those are all things that I can now look into all these years later. Because especially there was the one made for TV movie that I watched, didn't know what the hell was going on, thought to myself, maybe I'll check out the book one day. It'll actually make sense. The Langoliers.
Okay.
Did you ever watch that one?
Yeah, I remember seeing that got back in, like, I think it was about 95 or so. That was on TV as like a miniseries or a multi-night event.
Because I remember Bronson Pinchot was like the crazed character that was like essentially the villain. And I'm thinking to myself, you can't take Balky from Perfect Strangers and make him the bad guy. Nobody's going to believe it. And I remember the movie didn't get much praise, again, because Stephen King stories being translated to TV or film are kind of hit or miss sometimes. Every now and then you'll get a gem. Everything works out well. But most times they're like, what did we just watch? Why didn't they include this? Why didn't they do this? Why did they change that? Whatever the case is. It's always the case with adaptations. But going to that extent, it's fun to see the story being developed and how that plays out. So it makes me wonder sometimes if some of these horror films were first enacted as a novel and then from there taken further to further heights or further adaptations. We'll see, maybe there might be other details that were not necessarily involved in the visuals that could have been put into the book itself. So just a weird what if that popped into my head sometimes, because every now and then, like I remember, I think it was in middle school, and we had to do a book report, and I really wasn't into reading. If it wasn't a comic book, I really wasn't really into reading a regular book. I had just seen The Addams Family in the theaters, and just so happened to be that at the book fair there was an adaptation of the novel of the Addams Family, which I was like, I know the movie, I'll buy the book, whatever the case. I was shocked to find out that there were more scenes and details that were not in the film that were in the book. And for me, I was like, oh, this is cool. Like, this is like finding out, like, deleted scenes or extras before they were a thing. And at that point, I'm like, all right, I can appreciate this more. I can read the book and then enjoy the film all the more now because I have this little extra little tidbit that not many other people will pick up on. So, again, going back to our friend Kelly, who's probably listening. Hi, Kelly.
Hello, Kelly.
She's always been a very big proponent of reading, enjoys her books, always into it myself. Like, I always love to see that has a love for it. I'm learning to appreciate more and more. And as I do, I always think of her. So she's kind of fueling my audiobook choices sometimes. There you go, Kelly. If you didn't know, now you know. So, yeah, it's really cool. And it's finding different people who've done either acting in the films, directing films, or even producing, sometimes to see what they'll do. They'll do a horror movie, they'll do a comedy, they'll do a romantic movie, whatever the case is. But then sometimes they'll pick a genre and they'll just stick to it. Talking about Robert Englund, but then you've got guys like Peter Jackson who have done a variety of different films. As far as I know, Guillermo del Toro, which we've mentioned last time, because you mentioned Crimson Peak, right?
Yes.
With Tom Hiddleston. that's another guy who at this point has been attached to horror so strongly that he goes for it. Pan's Labyrinth. I remember that takes place during World War II, I want to say.
Pre World War II, during the Spanish Civil War, which I've heard referred to as the dress rehearsal for World War II.
Jesus, don't put it that way. That's terrifying. But yeah, I mean, that story at first, it starts off very simple, but once we start getting into the fantasy, a lot of different horror themes, or just scary themes in general, especially that one monster where he has got to go in, and it's the banquet and the buffet table, and the monster has its eyes on its hands, and it puts it up almost like bunny ears in a way to look around. It can't really see you, but it can hear you very easily, and just like, oh man, that's a terrifying fucking thing. Great film, lots of fun. But it also did Hellboy.
Yes,
like good stuff like that. It's like, that's fun. Keep doing that. In fact, I'm waiting for them to finally shut up and decide, hey, look, we're just going to give Ron Perlman a lot of money. Let's make Hellboy 3. Let's bring Ron Perlman back. Let's bring back Guillermo del Toro. Let's bring back, I'm blanking on her name right now, but the guy, the girl who played Hellboy's love interest. Bring them all back, have a lot of fun, and make a third one and close out the trilogy. Because, not for nothing, the one with David Harbour from Stranger Things, I haven't seen it, so I really can't give an honest opinion on it, but I've heard a lot of bad reviews on it, unfortunately, and mostly I think it's because the fans are saying, hey, if it's not Ron Perlman, we don't want another one. And unfortunately, I think they made their voices known.
I watched that about a year or so ago.
Ooh, okay.
It's not a great movie. It's a tough watch. It's just kind of shitty. I don't know what else to say other than that. I mean, what's his face does a pretty decent job in it. David Harbour's solid. I can't remember his name. I think it's Ian Holm, who plays whatchamacallit. He plays the father of the guy who's in charge of the BPRD. I can't remember the name of the character.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not important, but yeah, he's in it. And I was like, he's decent. But yeah, it wasn't even bad. It was very forgettable. Like, I don't know what else to say about it other than that. Like, I was like, I watched it, and then it took me 2 cities to get through it because I was so indifferent towards it. And then not long after that, I was like, that was just, who gives a shit?
So, I can't remember where the interview was with David Harbour that I heard one time. And he talks about anxiety and stress and dealing with, the Hollywood industry. And going into Hellboy, how stressed he was, not just how he wasn't sure what the hell was going to happen. And he knew that Ron Perlman was so beloved in it. And the first 2 movies, struck a chord with the fans, especially the second one was just a larger spectacle. Because they had more budget to do a lot of the creature work, and when they did the market, I think it was the fairy market, when they show all the different creatures and monsters, it just fleshed out the whole story more and more for the story for the movie itself. But then he talks about like just dealing with the letdowns, like just the absolute disappointments when it comes to certain things. And unfortunately, I think that was right around the time that Hellboy had come out, his version, and just was not that well received. And he goes, it's just certain things you think are going to hit. They're going to be big. There's a fan base, but sometimes the fan base just doesn't want what you're giving them. If you're not giving them specifically what they're looking for, in this case, Ron Perlman, and then at that point, they're just like, no, thank you, but no thank you. Let's not do this. Like, reboots and remakes, that's been such a negative connotation attached to them, because more often than not, they're being remade just because the studio wants to either hold on to the IP, whatever agreement they have to make a certain amount of films in a certain amount of time, or they're just trying to cash in, thinking, oh, we can just reboot this, remake this, and have it be that. Imagine this. Since we're talking about David Harbour, imagine about 10 years, if Netflix is still going strong, imagine them trying to adapt or reboot Stranger Things for another generation. Would you be up for that?
I don't know how I feel. I haven't. I don't know how I feel about that one right now.
I mention it only because that one's such a beloved series now, and it's been such a big hit for Netflix that anytime that they drop like a teaser or anytime they drop like a piece of news for it, people just jump on it immediately. In fact, there was a piece of news not from Netflix themselves, but from Millie Bobby Brown saying that, the story of doing Stranger Things is keeping her from doing some passion projects that she really wants to work on. Well, it's because she's locked in as far as her contracts and schedules and everything else. That's just like, again, the gilded cage of, I'm having fun. This series made me really popular and people know who I am. And because of it, I've been able to do all these other great things. But the things that I really want to do, I can't. So she's like, I can't wait to wrap it up, say thank you, and say goodbye. And that's fair, because we've had that I know I go back to superhero movies a lot, but when you look at guys like Chris Evans for Captain America, once they presented him the story of, hey, we're going to do the Avengers, and hey, we're going to like make this a multi-chapter saga where we're going to actually play out this big storyline and it's going to culminate in these big movies. You know, at first he was like, I don't know if I want to get locked into this, but when they backed up the truck full of money again, it became a different story. And I remember shortly after the Avengers, when they told him exactly what they were looking to do, he said, okay, but if we're going to do this, I'm not getting any younger. We better do this quick. And I'm losing my hair. So let's get to it. So it makes sense. Like, especially if you have your youth, if you have your looks for some of these people, it makes sense to capitalize on it while you got it, because otherwise, years down the line, you never know what's going to happen. He had fun. He bowed out. There's talks of them coming back. We'll see what happens. That'll be another story down the line, I'm sure. But for Stranger Things, which has been such a big show, everybody loves it. Everybody binges it. Everybody talks about it. The retro aspect of it, the nostalgia's there. That's all fun, but these kids, because that's what they started out, let's face it. How long has Stranger Things been running now? 7 years?
7 years.
Like, for these kids, that's a lifetime to grow up around that and everything else. I remember seeing the one kid, Wolfhard, the guy who plays the main kid in Stranger Things. He was in It, Chapter 1 and 2. And it's funny to see because he's a little bit older from like the early days of Stranger Things. So it's a little odd to see like the age jump here and there. But you got to remember, he's a kid. So Finn Wolfhard, that's his name.
Yep.
But the fact he's been in that, he's been in different movies. He was in the newer Ghostbusters, that's going to be getting a sequel. So to see that progression, but also see them locked into some of these contracts sometimes, I can understand. Like, it gets a little frustrating. You get a little impatient. There's things you want to do, but you can work on things in the meantime, and hopefully you'll find the freedom to do them once you have the FU money that Netflix is providing. Because let's face it, these kids have all hit it pretty big, is from my understanding. We're not talking about the whole residuals and contracts and anything else. I mean, initially they got paid a nice chunk of money, I'm sure, and to go forward to do all these different things. I know Millie Bobby Brown has done the Enola Holmes movies on Netflix. There's 2 of them, actually kind of fun. I mean, they're not like Oscar-winning performances, but they're just fun little detective stories. Sherlock Holmes' little sister, essentially, just as smart, just as resourceful as he is, and she goes off and has her own little adventures. Fun films. Aside from that, I can't think of anything else that she's been in recently. But again, if you find work in a genre, if you find work in a particular type of movies, then go for it. But sometimes these artists want to be just that. They want to be creative. They want to express. And sometimes if you lock them into a certain contract or into a certain franchise, then they can't do that. Zoe Saldana was the other one, who, to be honest, if there's one person I don't want to hear complain, it's Zoe Saldana, being both in the Avatar movies and the Marvel movies.
Okay.
I don't know like how much you can complain when you're getting that much thrown at your bank account. It's like, congrats, good for you. But I can understand that after a while, scheduling and everything else, like if they call you up and say you have to be in Australia because we're shooting on this location, this date. But I've got a family thing. We don't care. You have to be there. Contractually, you're obligated. Get your butt on a plane. Get there that day. Don't be late.
Yeah.
I get it. That's the business aspect of it that a lot of people don't like to talk about. But when they're on screen and they're having fun, they're behind the scenes and stuff like that, it seems like good times all the times. Not really the case, but we get it. It is still work. So their work just happens to be a lot more fun than they play dress up.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I don't know. I'm rambling on at this point, but I just, it's cool to see when somebody hits their stride and like, oh, like I got this gig in a comedy movie, or I get this gig as an action star. Awesome. Go for it. Love to see it. Support it. Keep doing it. Good example recently, Keanu Reeves in the John Wick movies. Even though he has a certain feeling about his character from the last movie, I haven't seen John Wick 4 yet, so nobody spoil it for me, please. But knowing what he wants the character to do at this point and where the whole story should go, like he's been doing it long enough, he has some input, I guess. But he's known as this action star now. Awesome. Ride that wave. Because the first 3 John Wick movies, lots of fun. Just silly action, gunplay, hitman against all these gangsters, and, you know, just ridiculous. All based off the fact that somebody killed his dog. It's like such a silly premise, but it's rolled out to these different films. They just keep going and going and going. It's like, when does it stop? When does it end? Might be sooner than later, from what I understand, but they've created this John Wick universe, this whole world. The Continental, I believe, was on Amazon not too long ago. I watched the first episode. It doesn't have the same feel as the films, but then again, it's pre John Wick himself. It's more fleshing out the world that these characters inhabit. And then there was the other project they were talking about where Ana de Armas, who I believe was in John Wick 4, if I'm not getting that correct, I think they, at the very least, they want to do a spin-off and have her be the character of the ballerina. So another assassin, more backstory, and living in this world again. So that's it. That's my that's my ramble for tonight. If you find something you love, stick to it.
Yep.
Sorry, I didn't mean to drown you out there for a bit.
Sorry, I'm very tired and I'm not feeling great. So
no, that's cool, dude.
I'm just hanging in there, man.
I got it. No worries. Is there anything else as far as like films that you're going to be watching? Let's put it this way. So you've told us about the films that you've watched so far. Are there any films that you've come across and you're like, maybe not, or maybe next time?
What, that I've like passed up on watching, or
for the 31 Nights?
Well, I've still got a ways to go, so I'm not passing up on anything.
Just whatever comes your way, like, let's watch it.
Well, it's a mixture of, like, there's some classics I want to go rewatch, but also I'm like, yeah, I'm trying to get in some new stuff. I'm also trying not to pay for too much stuff because there's a bunch of stuff that's come out within the last couple of years, like X, and I can't remember the name of the prequel for that one. I think it was called, not Nay, it was something else. Whatever one starred Mia Goth. I can't remember the name of the damn thing right now, but I've been meaning to watch those two for forever, and I just haven't gotten around to it. So I might cough up a couple of bucks and watch those. I also haven't watched Robert Eggers' The Witch since I went to go see it in the theater with Holly and our old pal Jimmy, like 8-9 years ago. So I think I might want to give that one another go around. And need to watch Dog Soldiers, which is a werewolf movie from about 20-something years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I make a small recommendation for you?
Sure. What's that?
It's been out for a year now, and to celebrate its 1-year anniversary, if you have access to Disney Plus, or if you know somebody who does, I would really recommend the Werewolf by Night mini that they did.
I watched that last year.
What'd you think of it?
I loved it. I thought it was fantastic.
That was, again, we spoke about last time how, if it was 2 episodes or 1 episode ago, we were talking about Doctor Strange, how that was supposed to be the first horror film in the in the MCU. It didn't quite turn out that way as far as the Multiverse of Madness. But if you watch Werewolf by Night, and this is again for anybody listening, that was more a horror film than Multiverse of Madness ever dreamed it could be. You know, bringing in the different killers, the hunters, and everything else, and then pitting them against one another. That's pretty much the premise. The fact that I get to see Man-Thing, which is a elemental character in the Marvel Universe, and they actually showed him on screen, I was like, holy shit. Was always fun. But now, so when it was originally released on Disney Plus, people are like, first off, why is this on Disney Plus? It's not a kids movie, so to speak, because everybody always thinks Disney has to equal family friendly. There is a few moments here and there where it doesn't go over the top. It's not like extra gory, but there are some scenes. But it was originally presented in a black and white format, which I think made it awesome. Only like very choice moments where they had color involved. But aside from that, they wanted to re-release it in a colorized version. And I'm like, that's brilliant. Like, give it another go around. Keep it in the rotation, especially this month. It's a great idea.
Yeah, I think I might watch the colorized version. I've watched the black and white one. I watched it last year. That was kind of one of those, like, I need something on for background noise that's fun to look at, because it's also just shot beautifully.
Yeah, it had for what it was, and it's essentially like not even a movie. It was a short, essentially.
Yeah,
because I can't remember how long it was. It had no right being as good as it was. I'm trying to remember the guy who actually did the. I'm blanking on it now. The guy who did the directing, he apparently that was his first attempt at a movie or a film.
Okay.
If I can find this real quick, Michael Giacchino.
Okay.
Let me see if I can find out some information on Mr. Giacchino real quick. I'm probably butchering his name. I apologize if he's listening. Like he really is. American composer of... No, I don't need an ad. Thank you. Michael Giacchino is an American composer of music for films, television, and video games. Composed the scores to the television series Lost, Alias, and Fringe, the video game series Medal of Honor and Call of Duty, and many films such as The Incredibles, Star Trek from 2009, Up, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, Jurassic World, Inside Out, Spider-Man Homecoming. So essentially this guy has a background in music composition. I don't know who said, hey, we're going to tap this guy to do our first, quote-unquote scary entry into the Marvel Universe. But I hope that they continue, because with the Bloodstone family, with Werewolf by Night himself, which the funny one is always when they refer to him, the character in the comic book, his name is Jack Russell. Draw your own joke there. And then again, the inclusion of Man-Thing, which I will go back on this again, and forgive me if I'm rambling again. The Marvel supernatural aspect of the comics is so difficult for Marvel to adapt into a TV show or a series or a movie. There's always something about it that gets hung up. You've got characters like Ghost Rider, Doctor Strange is already there, Morbius has been adapted by Sony, not the greatest. What was the other one? Blade has been the most successful one so far. They haven't done the Darkstalkers full-fledged yet, but that's another one. Oh, no, excuse me, not Darkstalkers, Night Stalkers. That's a fun comic book that I hope would be made. If they ever want to do an anthology series, they could do the Darkhold Redeemers, because they've already introduced the Darkhold book in WandaVision. And that would be like essentially like the Necronomicon, but in the Marvel Universe. And the different people who, grab a page and think they're going to read a spell and change their lives, and really it steals their souls, and they go through all this weird nonsense. Like, you might get superpowers, but you might have to, give up your soul for it, that kind of thing. Like 976 Evil. Brother Voodoo is another story that I would love to see. Arch-villain or supervillain for Doctor Strange. And I'm pulling out a bunch of different ones. I might have mentioned this before, but I'll say it again, only because it's one of my favorite stories. Back in the 90s, there was a supernatural story, I should say, a story that took place in the supernatural wing of Marvel Comics called, I want to say it was the Midnight Massacre. and it involved the characters from that I just mentioned, all the different superheroes, the Midnight Suns they were referred to as, Ghost Rider, Blaze, Morbius, the Night Stalkers were 3 members, and a few other ones here and there. I can't remember how many members were in the Darkhold. But all these characters come together, and they have to try to defeat this evil. Part of the story was Blade was part of the Midnight Suns, and at one point his whole deal is he wants to rid the world of all supernatural entities because of his history and what happened to his mom and everything else. He finds a page of the Darkhold, and essentially you get Blade on steroids, supernaturally. He starts going apeshit, not only killing a bunch of different bad guys, but also turning on the Midnight Suns themselves. So some of their allies get taken out by Blade, because now he's on this never-ending crusade to destroy all supernatural. But the thing is, his friends are all supernaturally based. So they have to now put Blade down, so to speak, to stop him from completing his mission. And it's just that. It's a massacre. Like, he starts taking out people left and right. And she's like, holy shit, Blade just got unleashed on the Marvel Universe. It would be done to like a larger extent when Deadpool kills the Marvel Universe or Punisher kills the Marvel Universe. But in this little dark wing of Marvel Comics, it was such a cool story. They adapted it into a video game. I want to say it was last year because they did Marvel's Midnight Suns. They swapped out some characters here and there, and they changed up the premise of the story overall, but the idea is still there. The basis is still there, and I always liked it. I want to check out the game itself to see what came of it, but again, I've got kids and I don't have time to get around to everything I want right now. But that's another thing. Like, I would love to see the supernatural part of the Marvel Universe brought to fruition a lot more. And Werewolf by Night so far is the best example of that. So,
yeah,
there you go. There's my ramble for that.
All right.
All right, sir. I'm not going to keep it much longer. I know you're tired. And I do appreciate you letting me run at the mouth for a little bit. I think we've put in work, right? You good?
Oh yeah, I think we've covered this sufficiently.
All right. If you made it this far, thank you for listening. My name is Eric Hernandez, along with
Doug.
And we are the Rabblecast. Have a good night, everybody.